20th day of October 2024. Oh, my apologies. I had it on the replay, did I? Oops. That's because I was tooling around before I went live. My apologies again. And again. And who's apologizing? And Dana is. And you can call in if you don't think my apology was strong enough, or you want to talk about nuclear. It's 709. We're in Canada. 709-589-4406. 4406. And welcome everybody. Holy shit, we got 8 people on their show? Oh my god. That's way too many. I get shy when I get more than 5. Should it be a crime for nuclear scientists to have kids, considering they destroyed all life? So it's hard to appreciate some of these polls, I'm sure. We'll get there. We'll get there. And wait a second. That's not supposed to be there. Let's keep going here. So hope this. I got a couple of headlines from the day of the die-offs. I think I'm just going to start covering some stories each day or every couple of days, because I don't think the world realizes how much trouble we're actually in and what's really going on. And so tonight, I'm hoping to educate you, make you more smarter. M-A-R-T, smart. So you can be... Well, all you need is... how do I put this so delicately, I wonder? All you need is... what's this? Oh, I don't remember that. So, this is a story from today. Let's jump into it. I'll worry about little stuff later here in the show. Hopes high for stranded humpback whale after refloating. The world couldn't care less, right? So they got these chicken necks. They're the only ones allowed to go near them. So clearly, you can see this is a peanut head. You can see 100% emaciated. And the peanut head is where all the blubber and meat is literally gone around the head, and so you end up with this like peanut shape. It's very distinct, by the way. And a whale, of course, got 10-12 inches of blubber, so why would you expect to see its spine? Because you wouldn't. And they got more pictures, which is convenient. Rescuers say they're hopeful a humpback whale found stranded. They forgot to mention it was emaciated. Had zero blubber left on it. On the south of the Scotland coastline will make a full recovery after it was refloated. So, like, they want you to think they went in and refloated it, right? It doesn't work that way. You're talking about tens of thousands of pounds. And so the whale probably sank, right, once it went back out. Just bear with me, because I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But I'm not in a bad spot either. I just wasn't expecting all of this stuff to be in my way. Let's go this way. You'll see in a second. My apologies. So a nuclear scientist basically will give you these are the facts. I mean, this is clearly a peanut head. Pictures get worse though. Checks the following day found no sign of the whale. And the medics, there's the medics right there. Because what they're doing is they're looking for vomit, and the vomit is where around $500,000 or something. So it's a big payday for them. That's why they won't let the public go near the whales, because they want to cut them open and get their hands on the vomit. They use it in perfumes and that. They're insane. Checks the following day found no sign of the whale. The medics will monitor the coastline. Like, I went out and done 5 to 6 months of research for 6 years after Fukushima on the ocean without coming home. And to suggest you're going to go out and monitor a coastline, the enormity of that statement is you can't just go out. You need multiple planes and helicopters to do something like that. But don't expect anything sensible. So medics. Oh, there's a couple of medics there. Look. Should call them headaches maybe. I think it's more appropriate. Clearly, this whale, and look at the spine, and just look at the tail. I'll zoom in for you in a second. It said the humpback whale live strandings in the UK were very few and far between. Well, there's over 7,000 extra humpbacks on top of an unusual mortality event already. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I had a chaos weekend myself. But it's okay. There's just lots going on. It said the humpback whale live stranding in the UK were very few and far between, and had responded to only a handful. Let me see. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Here's a headline. Now this is on top of an unusual mortality event for humpback whales and every other species. We got nuclear news coming up here in a bit. This is nuclear news, by the way. I'll explain that to you too in a moment. I just need a couple more of this stuff to help you appreciate the equation, so you got the proper material into the equation. La 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 la. Here we go. Yippee-ki-yay. We'll get there. We're definitely on the right track here. All right. Oh boy. See, the problem with these stories is they're complicated, right? So I got a neat way of explaining it, hopefully. We're almost there. This is normal around here, by the way. This is normal. Climate change, of course. All right, I'll just stop here because it's crazy. Anyway, let's talk about it. Here we go. I'm going to come back to... Let me go back. So you know where I left off, and this is where we're going to pick up when we get back. We're going to pick up on this whale, the peanut head whale. Speaking of peanut heads. All right. So did a marine heat wave cause 7,000 humpback whales? This is on top of an unusual mortality event for humpback whales. I got it there somewhere. It's there in the pile. I'm going to show you in a minute. Did a marine heat wave cause 7,000 humpback whales to starve to death? And so that this is a conjecture. This is an opinion, right? The heat wave, of course, is real. It was caused by Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, and that's coming up shortly after we get through these two stories, which could take a while sometimes on this site, because every story has to be told appropriately. Sometimes it's not bad for the person on that side, but for me, I got to dig through all the information and provide you with the whole story as best as we can, right? And we're pretty good at it. So here we go. Did a marine heat wave cause 7,000 humpback whales to starve to death? So a humpback whale can travel 10,000 miles, kilometers without eating because of its fat reserves, right? But it's not supposed to. But we've seen that documented now where they've done that. And we know this because they'll travel 10,000 miles and then on the way back, as you'll see, they're dropping dead and they're emaciated. This is the common. And when you look at these whales, this one here is emaciated. 2017-19 mink whale unusual mortality event. The North Atlantic right whale unusual mortality events. There's many species. The orcas unusual mortality events. The seabird continues for another summer. This is 2018. That was summer 3, I think it was. Emaciated and starved. And 2016, this is 2015 when it was started, it was 1 million common murres and 1 million Cassini auculates, seabirds' migratory route. And the common murres eat anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and everything else. So they showed up completely empty. But there was also 1 million Cassini auculates, and they're microscopic eaters. So you had two different spectrums of the food chain showing up at the same time. And so that's, the ocean is broken big time. And it's forever, thanks to Fukushima pulse event. Marine researchers shocked as an unprecedented number of whale carcasses wash up on the west coast. Is this Britain or something? Described the largest mortality event on this species anywhere ever. What year was that? 2018. This was the culvert beak whales, and so they estimate at least 1,000 had showed up. They were in different stages of decomposition, but the ones that were recent were emaciated and empty stomachs. And it was around 2019 when they stopped reporting, for the most part, on contents of the whales, particularly the pilot whales. I can show you those headlines from 2014, 15, and 16. Oh, so yeah, this was the United Kingdom, and they were showing up in different places, right? So you can see that the numbers there are in the order that they found them, which doesn't mean anything, right? Because you're talking about a huge territory, and you only find basically 1 out of 10 or 11. My apologies. And the rest of them sink, see? Or just not found. And so they died over a very large area over a 30-day period. So they estimated it was at least 1,000 culvert beak whales. And the consensus was the ones that they were able to do a necropsy on were emaciated. They wouldn't admit, some of them, they were like, oh, I was probably hit by a ship, right? And they do that everywhere all of a sudden now. But if you look at just let me bring that in too for a second. See if I can find it. Researchers predict West Coast killer whales will exceed 1,000 atoms a kilogram. So I call a Becquerel an atom because that's what creates the Becquerel, is an atom. So the Becquerel has to be present for the atom has to be present. The anthropogenic man-made isotopes has to be present for the Becquerel to register. And the Becquerel, you're registering. Okay, so this is important. So let's go here. All right, so part pilot whales, this is part of one of two that I'm going to show you right now on establishing that died on the Lovers Keys, which is Florida, I believe, and Tuesday showed all the animals had empty stomachs. That was 2014. And which means we can trace the broken food chain at least to 2014 in that, by just using that story. And the whales that died in the Everglades also had empty stomachs. They're talking about pilot whales. Now we see the same thing because whales, the pilot whales refuse to stop killing themselves in New Zealand and Australia, right? But that's where they're supposed to turn around on their migratory route. The beluga whale population in St. Lawrence on a catastrophic path. This is September 29, 2014 also. And NOAA, the American government, said it counted 28 whale strikes northeastern waters between 2006 and 2010, pre-Fukushima. And so now they're saying like every second, third whale is killed by a ship. And so worldwide, though, a National Marine Fisheries Service survey covering 1975 to 2002 found 292 records are confirmed or possible ship strikes to large whales, which is basically 330. But the big number that was out there was 1,200 pre-Fukushima whale strikes. And now they're claiming like there's 1,200 a year whales dying of ship strikes. But what we are able to show is that they're emaciated. When you got pictures, the pictures don't lie. And we're going to get back to the original story from today, when nature lets us, because we got to get through this stuff first, in order so you can appreciate the backstory and why everything is post-Fukushima, though. What is interesting, climate change is post-Fukushima. The supercell cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons are post-Fukushima. The mass bird die-off, the seals, the sea lions, we've never seen. All the stories that are covering it, and especially 2013, 14, 15, 16, had always described it as unprecedented, largest in human history, never seen before, cataclysmic events, etc., etc. But you don't see that narrative pre-Fukushima. 20,000 birds and just starved to death off the Dutch coast. Nobody knows why. Is this 2020 or something? We covered it. 2019. No, this story is 2019. So the 20,000 birds that just starved to death off the Dutch coast and nobody knows why. Well, they starved because there was no food. Not because they wanted pizza that night or something, but because, there was no food. If you want to see seagulls here where I'm to, you got to go to McDonald's. You normally go to the low tide where they're feeding, right, every day. But now you just go to McDonald's because there's nothing at the low tides. Which is the nursery, by the way, of your oceans. It's not funny. It's just a gallows laugh. Alaska adds krill. So we're getting to it. We're almost there. We're just a bunch. Not that far away. We got 5, 10, 15 left to go through the backup story to give you some context of the last 13 years. Post-Fukushima. Alaska adds krill mussels to the list of unusual mortality events. And when we done the research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska with 27,000 islands, and the tidal zones are empty, and nobody's concerned about it, you are in a twilight zone already, see? The mussels were missing on the whole coastline. 10 sperm whales die after stranding on the Yorkshire coast. Sperm whales, not pilot whales or humpback whales, but sperm whales. Whales won't stop killing themselves in New Zealand. It was just die-off after die-off after die-off, and you can see their spine very clearly in these pictures. That's emaciation, right? And they acknowledged it pre-2016 that their stomachs were always empty. And then they stopped talking about that because... And then there's been more died... I don't know how the best way to frame. More than 400 whales beached themselves in New Zealand, and they say this is normal, right? But when you look at all the other species, they're doing the same thing. That's not normal. We've never seen that before. And this is not normal, but it was made normal during the nuclear testing era. When, like, right now, if you go to... Bear with me, I'll bring it up for you, because otherwise, he's a lawyer. Why didn't he bring it up? He shows you everything else. Why didn't he show you that? He can find that. He knows where everything's doing. He's been doing it forever. Like, I've heard all the trolls, okay? The pro-nuclear nut jobs. So, like, I should do a radio show. They would freak out if I start doing a radio show because I don't have to do all this work. But the problem is, I can't educate the population. I can't educate the general population by doing a radio show the way I can, by presenting you with the documentation to back up my crazy assertions that always seem to be true, always seems to be correct. In situ measurements, cesium-137 contamination in fruits from the Marshall Islands, but it wasn't just fruits. Extended over 1 million square kilometers, radioactive fallout from the testing program contaminated a huge swath of land and ocean, a huge swath. Wait a minute, what was Chernobyl again? They say 27 square kilometers is well over 1,000 in reality. But this one is extending over 1 million square kilometers because it's in the ocean. That's right, I copied this so I can do this. Forgotten fallout, the unfulfilled promise of nuclear justice for the Marshallese. Again, like they're playing on a radioactive wreck in a radioactive nuclear wasteland on top of that. And over there in the corner, by Forgotten, just slightly to the left of it and down below it, is a massive radar installation. And so these children are being bombarded with brutal radiation. And remember, some of you who've been around for a long time probably remembers the studies we covered of how radiation isotopes can be aggravated to be much more energetic with certain radio frequencies. That could be, and like these things are already brutal frequencies. Like the radar on my boat, that little radar, that's 27 miles. And so it has to hit everything and bounce back to me. So that's an incredible friggin' wave. How can that be good on all the birds and insects and animals and mammals? I only use it in heavy fog so I don't hit another ship, right? Because I always just use my plotter. 67 nukes were exploded. Let me get that smaller screen. 67 nukes were exploded in the Marshall Islands, the equivalent of dropping 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for a dozen years. And so one of the bombs alone was equal to way over 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at the same time. Right? One of the Castle Bravos, 1,000 Nagasaki's. That's a nuclear war. So if Ukraine and Russia or Israel and Iran exchanges 500, out in the desert, were we going to call that a nuclear war? To say they don't hit each other's cities, they just hit forests and deserts and everything else like they were doing. Do we call that we don't call that a nuclear war for some reason. But the radioactive fallout is clearly the same thing. And so when you look at the Marshall Islands, the radioactive fallout from those tests were clearly 1 million square kilometers in 2019. It's still too radioactive to be habitable. And then when you look at some of these numbers, they're talking about 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for a dozen years, radioactive fallout environment. And that's why you're seeing 1 million square kilometers today that they acknowledge is still way too radioactive to be habitable. All right, keep going. So what I'm trying to say is that the pilot whales that were coming down here in these beautiful, beautiful tropical paradises, incredible tropical paradises, we had beautiful tropical paradises like the Christmas Island, which the British And the Americans' nuclear industry just completely annihilated with radioactive fallout and destruction. These were the nurseries of the Pacific Ocean on top of that. You had the French government nuclear testing was equal to a Nagasaki bomb every day for 12 years, or every week for 12 years for the French Polynesians. And there's not a person out there that doesn't have heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, cancers, you name it. The British also went down to Maralinga and Montebello in it, for instance, and is it Maralinga or Montebello, the islands group? Incredible, beautiful tropical atolls. All of these are tropical, just paradises that we can never utilize. And there were incredible nurseries for millions of generations of species, right? Each species for millions of generations migrated. It's the same with those whales. It's the same with those birds. They've been migrating for millions and millions of generations to these feeding areas, right? For their migration. Okay, keep going here. 2016 to 2021, 5 year at that point, unusual mortality event along the Atlantic coast, not the Pacific, but also the Atlantic. Now, there's another one for the Pacific for humpback whales. The Atlantic right whale, North Atlantic right whale unusual mortality event, which is the same thing, right? In the North Atlantic. The gray whale unusual mortality event, 10,350 in the last 6 years or something. The majority of them are emaciated. But according to the media, every second, third dead whale was killed by a ship, which is absurd to suggest it was. It was absurd. But that's what they don't want to blame the nuclear, so they're just scuttling numbers here and there, right? And then climate change, of course, is thrown out there as a useful idiot. 30 whales found dead in an unusual mortality event in Alaska. It was multiple species in just a few week period. All of them were emaciated. The food chain is broken, clearly. And so this story was great. Explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru amid deadly bird flu. This is major media, CNN. So CNN wants you, when you see, because it was 3,500 or something, CNN wants you to think of that as bird flu. But that's severe emaciation over a very long period. And there was the second picture. So they put out a story talking about bird flu and showed you pictures of emaciated sea lions that died of starvation. I've never seen nothing like that in all my years as a commercial diver. And I've been chased off the ocean floor at least 300 times by sea lions because I was in their territory. And what they do is they run at you. Well, they don't run at you. They can't run. They're sea lions. I know, stupid. They come at you, full speed, and you're a diver, and you're like, oh, shit. It's going down right now. And then they turn at the last second, right? And they turn away from you. And you know how when you're a kid, you would like do this over your face cloud or bar of soap in your bathtub, and it would just magically a second later just hop, right? Well, that's what they do to you down under the ocean. But blowing bubbles is a sign of aggression. Don't ask me who Bubbles is. We're not talking about that. We're talking about producing bubbles from blowing in a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. But I don't know how many people played that joke on me. I would talk about blowing bubbles. And if you don't say underwater at the same time, then they're going to come out with that line against you, which is pretty pathetic if you ask me. So the bird flu in 2023, last year, they were suggesting, which would take many months for the whale seals to become that emaciated. That's the severest. Like normally these are 1,500, 2,000 pound creatures. Climate change likely played a role in the 40% drop in the Pacific gray whale population. Well, we broke the food chain, and climate change is nuclear, by the way. I'll explain that coming up too. We're not, unfortunately, some of the preambles can take quite a while to these shows, and we got a lot of nuclear news to get to. I'm not sure how this is going to play here. One primary suspect is food scarcity. I guess that's one way of putting it. They can't find any food, Dana. Yeah, but they cover 10,000 friggin'... It's actually 10,000 miles, not 10,000 kilometers, I think. Like 14,000 miles or something, isn't it? Yeah, just bear with me. There's nothing easy when I do it. Oh, make it lucky here today. I don't know. I seen it, now I can't find it. Okay, we'll find it there. Okay, let me keep going here. One primary suspect is food scarcity. So that was 10,000 extra, or 10,000 in 2022. There's a lot more died since then. 10,350 whales just died in a few years. Now, that's just gray whales, because there's unusual mortality events for every single species out there. 8 dead sperm whales on a German beach. 6 dead sperm whales on a beach, mass beaching in Australia. And between Australia and New Zealand last year, there was 14 sperm whales ran up on the beaches. And you can see the peanut head on that one. And these, you'll see. And there was another one where in the UK there was 10 washed up on the same beach at the same time. We've never seen nothing like that before. But we're seeing it in every species, aren't we? And God bless the scientists. They're always there for us, right? They're proving that they're there, and they got their paper suits on so they won't get injured. That's sarcasm, by the way. Okay, so back to the story from today. Now, when you look at his head, that's clearly peanut head. And now when you look at his tail section, his spine back there, it's like, oh my goodness. So look at this unbelievable emaciation. Pre-2011, pre-Fukushima, you would never see spines that look like that, period. Now it's normal, right? Oh, that's normal, Dana. Yes, I know it's normal now if you're just coming on board in the last 7, 8, 10 years. Well, we've been at this for a long time. So whenever I put in artificial intelligence, ask make me a picture of a nuclear scientist on the beach with whales, this is what it gives me. And stuff like that, huh? AI knows, folks. AI knows. I know she knows. So that's severe emaciation from today's pictures. And, I mean, when you look at the peanut head, that's incredible peanut head. Which means all the meat is gone, right? That's what you expect to see in severe emaciation. But, I mean, that is insane. And this shouldn't be in Britain in the first place. But he says it's almost miraculous. That's a picture of him right there, by the way. It's almost miraculous that the whale survived all night on the beach. Well, no, because they come back the next morning, the whale was gone, so therefore they figured it survived. So why didn't they stay there all night? At low tide. What stopped them? Do you get it? Nothing. The whale was dead. We hope the humpback recovers fully and was merely caught by the huge tides in this region. So whoever wrote that, which is the BBC, whoever wrote that for the BBC was probably somebody in the nuclear industry. I think there's a picture of him right there on his birthday. They took him to the beach. He seems like a functional person, but he's not. Right? He's, if you work for the nuclear industry, you're not. There's nothing normal about that person. So people like that should be. In the future, it'll be legal, I would imagine, to capture them, sell them to a laboratory, and then use them for experiments instead of monkeys. Because that would be the most appropriate use of them, as far as I know. I'm not the only one who thinks that, by the way. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying, you can, if you got to, I suppose. If you run out of monkeys, there's always nuclear scientists we could use. Insects are disappearing. We should be very worried. Well, the nuclear scientists, well, I don't know. Oh. Insects are the creatures that act as a lubricant in the machine of life. Man, whoever wrote that should be ashamed of themselves. From pollinating vital crops to managing organic waste on a continental scale. Well, the ecosystem was like a glass of seawater was 1 billion creatures, for instance. And the forest is similar in many ways per kilogram of legacy soil, right? Pre-nuclear industry we're talking about. Like when the nuclear industry, that was the decline of all species worldwide. And so you can trace the die-offs, mass die-offs that are recorded in history to the nuclear industry's open ocean, open atmospheric testing. And all the underground tests were all vented straight to the atmosphere at very high speeds. So it's a complete misdirection to suggest it was underground. But when it rains, it washes everything down into your water table. When it is underground, it blows a big hole there, and that all the water is split open, the earth all over. Like one of the studies, and I don't know where it's to at the times, but I gotta look through my old stuff. But one of the studies I remember we used to share years ago was that water within 1,800 miles of a nuclear test changed the structure. And so we're designed for structured water. All species on the planet are designed for what's known as structured water. And if you poison water, it changes the structure. And that'll manifest in the fact that crops grown in structured water will produce extra crop a year. It'll produce 30% more foliage, 30% more fruit, and it'll be harvested 30% quicker than the unstructured water. And then there's documentation of structured water changing to a structure, dirty water being able to change to a structure by Buddhist monks and people like this that were praying to water and thanking water. And just thanking water and just treating water as a person basically is very sweet. Thank you so much, water, when you drink your water, was shown to change the structure of the water. And water, of course, is the only thing that exists in all three forms, liquid, gas, and solids, ice. And another study, a documentary called BOA, which was Russian, was shown that water taken from the Alps, I don't even know if it was the Alps, it was very high altitude anyway. It was very considered the most pristine water, glacier water basically. And it was flown by helicopter to an airport. That was flown then into United States it was Harvard and Yale, I think, was doing a study in collaboration with Harvard University or Medical University or something, hospital. And so they had terminally ill patients with cancer, last stage cancers. And they gave them a glass of water. They took their blood samples and then gave them a glass of that water when it showed up. So it was straight, flew by helicopter to the airport, flew to their country, America. Then they took a private helicopter or plane directly to Harvard, and then the experiment started. And that their blood started unplating when they drank the water, which is the opposite of what cancer does, right? And they actually watch it rejuvenate and recover. And you've seen the same thing, by the way, happen with the large doses of vitamin C. Terminally dying patients. But structured water, which is water that's running over rocks and minerals and everything, just restructures itself, right? It's not polluted by chemicals or electrolysis. So electrolysis and chemicals will unstructure your water. And we're designed for structured water, which is, we see, all the comments we see are basically water. And so it truly is like this unique thing, right? Water is, you can't have a, there's 8 million species in this planet that only exist because of water and because of the water structure. That's where they accelerate into. And anyway, over, I think it was 4 hours or something like that, you can probably find a BOER, I think was the documentary. BOA. I could be wrong in the spelling. It was a Russian documentary on water, and then put in BOA, you might find it. There's a whole bunch of other experiments that they had done too. And so they done this over about 4 hours or 6 hours, actually, maybe. And they watched the patients start to recover, go from terminal to being rejuvenated with structured water. And a Buddhist monk who was given nothing but stale bread and dirty water and was kept in the bottom of a prison for like 2 years or something in a dark cell. When they finally released him, instead of being this crippled and beaten and broken man, Buddhist monk, he was completely healthy. He had prayed to the water before he drank it, right? It was really interesting. All right, insects are disappearing. Let's keep going here. My apologies. I digress sometimes, but I think it's important that you know about structured water. And structured water can also apparently be created by freezing it and thawing it out if you're in desperate times. But if you're going to go get it from springs, go buy a cyanide kit to test the water. They're cheap, like $15. So you can test the water and make sure it's not on a cyanide pit or something, right? So insects are disappearing. We should be very worried. Nuclear scientists are like, yeah, don't do with us. We're like a banana on a potato chip walking in the sunshine. The problem is that they're quite quickly disappearing. Now, we've been covering this hardcore for many years. I think it was around 2015 I started realizing the insects were gone. And so we started going out doing research expeditions on insects. And one of the places we done was called Cathedral Grove. It's about 70 miles from Port Alberni, Ucluelet area, Vancouver Island, all the way out to... it's from Port Alberni to Ucluelet, basically. It's about 70 miles or something. And it's all these old growth trees. There's trees there where you can drive a car through it. And the trees are so big, buses will come and stop, and everybody on the bus will get in the tree and get their picture taken, right? You should like being in a cave. And the trees are, base is 20, 25 feet wide. The old growth red cedar is 400 or 500 feet high. And you can just walk through the trees all day long, total shelter, and 100-degree temperatures, beautiful cooler. But this is a major highway that goes down through there, and there's a couple of sections there, and I look for these places when I'm doing this. One of the things I was doing was all the motorhomes rather, coming down. There was a big rest area and there was a big gas station, and so they would all basically go in there. And I approached a lot of them because it was a little awkward at that time. And I asked them, I said, I'm studying insects. I'm wondering how many times you cleaned your windows on this last couple of days and whatever. They said, actually, I haven't cleaned the windows at all. I said, do you mind if I look at the front of your vehicle, see how many insect splatters are on it? Because that's what I'm doing here today, right? I'm doing it to everybody's coming through. Because these big, beautiful motorhomes, there was a few splatters, but there was nothing there, right? They didn't have to clean their windshield. And a lot of them told me the same thing. Well, I never thought about it, right? Yeah, you're right. I just never thought about it that way. There was no insects. But also on the highway when you're coming in, there's these areas where they leave Cathedral Grove and they go through this section. And you'll see all the dirt gathered up. And so there's like a cement for about a half a mile. And so there's sections there, though, that are grooved out. Basically, you can pull over if you got a bad engine or whatever. But anyway, it's still walls, cement walls. Because it's huge cliffs, right? And massive trees. They're never going to get you out of there. And so all of these spaces, I was going in on my little trike, and I wasn't seeing any insects, debris in the dirt on the side. So all the dirt was on the side of the road in that sheltered areas where the only way to get it out of there would be a heavy rainfall, right? And there was no insects. And we were panicking for quite a few weeks because we didn't believe this could be real, right? Turned out it was very real. So nuclear scientists, right, when they do interviews, they basically can't belittle the nuclear industry. They don't have to. You just want to look at them, you know they're crazies. Okay, so we talked about the whales, and we talked about the insects. I also showed you a whole bunch of documentation from the last number of years post-Fukushima of the die-offs. I also showed you documentation of 1 million square miles just in the Marshall Islands. So imagine what the Christmas Islands like. We had Marilinga, which is still, they admit now 70 years later, in Australia is still too radioactive because of what the United Kingdom had done to be habitable or even go there for visits. The French Polynesians, we can assume Russia and China done similar stuff, of course, in Pakistan and India. Now, we're not talking about dumping into the ocean that they've done for decades, but don't let that, just because I didn't mention it, don't think that it wasn't brutal on our planet. Former Prime Minister of Japan, half the people in Japan were close to being evacuated after the start of the Fukushima crisis. So if your nuclear power plant breaks down, you can lose half the population of your country has to leave. Just remind me that Dana Nasana had put some comments in there, and I can't quite read the top ones. I might be able to copy it though right now. Let me see if I can. That's how I cheat sometimes to read something. No, that's not it. I screwed up, eh? Well, he was talking about a truck got caught up in the floods, I believe North Carolina. He said he was hoped it was fake news. I had looked for it. It's out on my other computer right now. I just never had time because Dana put that there. Someone please prove me wrong. And would explain why FEMA stayed away, which is great insight, Dana. And folks, a single truckload of nuclear waste up in North Carolina where all those people are still missing and they can't come up with enough body bags is very probable if that's true, right? And they could cover it up. Look what they've done with Fukushima. Hi, James and David and Kroll, Sacramento. Yeah, Dana Nasana got my name. I was just looking for more what Dana Nasana was saying. So the cadaver dogs, yeah, I remember that. I just can't see it on, because when I plug into my operating system, everything goes, it goes gigantic on me on my computer. So let me see if I can get a boo at it. Oh, it's even worse. What the hell is going on, Dana? Oh. I'm talking Dana to me. I'm just trying to read Dana's comments. And if I shrink the page right down, I still can't read it. Torture. But I did look for it. Okay, let's keep going here. Yeah. Let's keep going. I'm just catching up in the comments. Thanks, Dana. I'll look it up after for sure. All right, here we go. Rock and roll. Back in business. We got a poll. Did I mention that? Should it be a crime for nuclear scientists to have kids considering they destroyed all life? All right, here we go again. So time is running out. Where have all the insects gone? The whales are emaciated, and we're severe emaciation. The scientists are getting their selfies. Okay, that's where we left off. But scientists getting their selfies. Just let me put one. I got one more part for that, so just I apologize. All right, here we go. Let's show out this stuff too while we're at it. Because it's cool. And just let me show you some of my research expedition material. Alrighty, here we go. Oh my goodness, I didn't do that. Okay. How much Earth could a nuclear scientist chuck if a nuclear scientist could chuck Earth? So these are pictures from research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. This is before and after. So we've done these research expeditions from Vancouver to Alaska. There's 27,000 islands up there. And the species 2 year post-Fukushima. And why are they pretending they're in a building that don't exist? Oh, that's right, because they don't want to be associated with an extinction event. So species 2 year left is what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be incredibly vibrant colors, right? Absurd amount of species. And that's just a couple of pictures from the research expeditions we've done for years, because Fukushima actually happened, despite what the academics will try to get you to believe. Half of the people in Japan were close to being evacuated. So why would you evacuate half the people in Japan? Which is... There's 36 million people just in metropolitan Ontario, Tokyo. Half the people, because why would you give up half your country for a power plant? So what? Because if you have an accident, half the country has to run away. My experience as a prime minister during the Fukushima disaster. That's quite a statement. Now, the reason they didn't evacuate half of Japan was because they said that didn't happen. But you're like, Dana, no, look at it. It happened. I know. That's what I said. And you can go get that picture off Tepco, but they'll say nothing got out. It was equal to 3 grams of sugar, right? Reactor 3 may have had second meltdown a week after the first, which is that prize right there. Each one of these are a planet killer, by the way. At the top of each of the building was 8 reactor cores, and each reactor core is at least 100 Chernobyls, because it's pure uranium, pure plutonium. They're huge reactor cores, unlike Chernobyl, which was a brand new reactor, had no fuel pools. And so you're talking about 800 Chernobyls for each of these buildings. Now remember, this stuff is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So a single atom in your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, because it's pulsing Becquerels every second. So the Becquerel can't exist without the atom. Reactor 3 may have had a second meltdown a week after the first. Well, this wasn't a meltdown. It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pool right out of the building. kind of like that. Well, no, that's right. That's it. The plumes in all the models covered the entire planet, typically within 30 days. And that plume is rich in cesium-137, which the French study was 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, which means you blanketed at least the northern hemisphere and everything in it, Canada, United States, New Mexico, with multi-millions per square meter. This stuff means everything else is there too then, right? So acknowledge of any isotope is acknowledging of the rest of them. I keep going there. Radioactive materials like cesium are brought back to the surface soil each year by plant growth and pollinators. So it covers the whole planet, and each year's the cesium they're talking about. But there's not just cesium, there's uranium, plutonium, Americium, neptunium. So again, reactor 4 doesn't exist. The fuel pool's reactor cores are at the top of the bill. So all of those inventories. So they took reactor 3 and 4. Remember, 4 got nothing left. 3 ejected the pools and the reactor cores out of the building. So they just pretended everything was okay. There's another picture that's supposed to be right there. I must have put it somewhere else. Just keep going. Well, we can use this one for reactor 3. Right? And this one for reactor 4. So this is 2013, November the 7th. Members of the Mediatok Electric Power Company employees walked down the steps of a fuel handling machine after looking at the spent fuel. So they're way above the spent fuel pool and housing the Unit 4 reactor to Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, which is that building over there. So to be at the fuel pool, you got to be at the very top of the building to look down on a fuel pool. You can see the guts are hanging out of that. Well, you know, not the guts, but debris, because there's nothing left. You're not going to go in there and find a desk or a telephone or a chair or a wall socket that's functional, even if it wasn't a nuclear meltdown, right? And there was 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. So reactor 3 and reactor 4, what they done was they put covers over both of these buildings. That's reactor 4, and there's little debris right there, for instance. And so this cover is all it is, but then they claimed that they were in that building. Now they've done the same thing with reactor 3. These covers don't physically touch the buildings on top of that, because they would crumble. Look at it, reactor 3. That will crumble. Look at reactor 4. That's going to crumble if you touch it, right? With, you know, that kind of weight, right? So they were built off-site, brought in there, and then they pretended they were in the buildings getting fuel out of a pool. Why would you do that? Because whales refused to stop dying post-Fukushima. So there was no radioactive fallout. It was equal to 3 grams of sugar, according to a professor of nuclear and quantum engineering in Seoul, South Korea. So this is a model of the media. We got many stories that mentions the name of all of these dots I got there. There was 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries for a decade. The food was. The International Atomic Energy Agency in 2011 admitted there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation, and that the allowable radiation standards are based on a benefit, not safety. But how can you have a benefit? An anthropogenic man-made radiation. So if a single atom with 200 million on the head of a needle, if you take a single one and get it in your body attacks that one for the rest of your life with white blood cells and eventually builds a tumor around it. But like if you cut your finger, it'll attack with white blood cells for a couple of days and it'll be healed, right? And then your red blood cell count come back up. But with radiation bioaccumulation in your body is pulsing energy every second, which is the Beck wall, and the atom. So the atom, it doesn't matter if the anthropogenic atom has a very long half-life or not, it's still going to pulse the energy for its entire legacy. It's going to decay to other isotopes, anthropogenic man-made isotopes, that will still pulse energy every second for its legacy. They're not inert. And so The nuclear industry wants you to believe that in crazy stuff, like absolutely lunatic stuff, suggesting that it doesn't pulse any energy even. And we've had, last week I had a commenter saying 200,000 atoms only pulse energy every 10 a year or something, right? I've heard some pretty insane stuff, but that was one of the worst ones. So, by the way, that's the story. You can go read this one, where he claimed that it was 2.2 grams of tritium is the only thing that got out, but it's in 1,000 tanks, and that was the equivalent of throwing 3 grams of sugar into the ocean. All right, remember, the tanks were all full. Let me play that clip. I'm going to go find out where I lost my way here. But this clip is BBC in 2013, Rupert Winfield Hayes. And he's talking about how all the tanks were at the end of this short video, how all the tanks were filled. But there's a lot more going on, including Tepco acknowledging they have no control of the water.
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation.
I forgot. Last week I had adjusted the volume. I forgot to set it back. What are you going to do? Okay, here we go. My apologies. I know on the last video I done there was a section was really loud because I forgot to dial back the audio. My apologies. Here we go.
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, Tepco, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear Tepco is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what Tepco can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if Tepco is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Right, so all the tanks were full in 2013. Why did they build all the tanks anyway? 1,000 tanks in 2013. And a typical reactor goes through 4,500 tons a minute. It's 1 million gallons a minute, which is enough to fill up all those tanks 6 times a day, typically without meltdowns. So when you melt down, you need more water, not less water. The idea of the water is so it doesn't run away. Once it runs away, you can't actually use the water to cool it. It doesn't need oxygen to burn, right? Whales won't stop killing themselves in New Zealand. And you can see they're emaciated. And if you see their head, you'll see the peanut. This was a Neptunium-239 dispersal. Based on, to your left, the top one, 20 days. Yeah, the 31st of March 2011. So that's 20 days after the tsunami. That's that neptunium, which decays to plutonium, by the way, which killed all the dogs in all the experiments, for instance. Radiation health specialist, children with over 11 atoms a kilogram. Becquerel's is a pulse of energy. So, like, when I say Becquerel is an atom, I'm just rounding it off. And the reason I'm rounding it off, you'll see coming up in a second, is because we're talking about so much. It's not just going to be Neptunium-239, for instance, right? I'm just going to walk you through that a little bit, because apparently they weren't very impressed with my Thursday video when I showed it to you. Might as well do it again. Show you a bunch of different plumes that are documented. So children with over 11 atoms a kilogram start to see heart problems, but you got plumes of neptunium, according to Tepco's models, which are always going to be very tiny numbers, covering the entire planet, which means everybody's breathing it in. So children, for mammals, for instance, children, they're small mammals basically, with over 11 atoms a kilogram cesium. So I'm being generous by suggesting that there's only one pulse per atom, right? Start to see heart problems. Children will see heart problem with 11 atoms a kilogram, which is pretty tiny. So this is another model based on Tepco's numbers of the plutonium-239 dispersals. You got neptunium-239 dispersal, plutonium-239 dispersals. Okay, bear with me. So you also got xenon-133 at 1 million atoms per square meter. So they're talking about ground, covered on the ground, which is in crazy numbers, at 1 million atoms over the west coast after reactor explosions. Private emails revealed the highest levels of government worried about the health impacts in the United States. And the nuclear industry tried to bury the truth. And UC Berkeley experts told the public there is no plume, despite the fact there certainly was plumes. So you got xenon-133, plutonium-239, neptunium-239. You got cesium-130, iodine-131 at 20 million particles, which are worse than the actual atoms. They're particulates of steel and cement and everything that was ionized and radiated, atomized and aerosoled, cement and steel and everything else. And then that is released as a permanent enemy of humanity and the 8 million species and everything with replicating cells. So 20 million particles of iodine-131 per liter fell on the United States. Per liter! And that's what it looks like when it falls on the United States, apparently, in Canada. So you have neptunium-239, plutonium-239. You have xenon-133 at 1 million. You have 20 million particles per liter of iodine-131. You have 1 million times cesium-137 to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And this model is based on the 18th, which is 7 days. Model, right? So that model, of course, is this model right here. This is the French government, right? And this is 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. And this model plays out over 31 days. We got quite a few of this stuff. Sometimes I get confused because the whole planet after 31 days, we know it's harmful, and we know we have a sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. These are hot particles, by the way. It's going to sterilize. Now, whenever you think about the applications to the humans, then multiply it by 1,000 times worse for the species, like insects and birds, mammals and spiders and animals and squirrels and everything else. Tend to concentrate in the testicles. 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur per day may have been inhaled by the Californians. Well, if it's true for males, it's true for females, right? Sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. These are hot particles. These are brutally hot particles. Because they were spraying salt water in the reactors, and the sulfur is liberated and creates these spherical shapes. And they ingest the uranium, plutonium, americium, the neptuniums, the strontiums, all the other heartbreaking stuff. Okay, so let me go backward. We got Neptunium-239 covering the whole planet. We got Plutonium-239, which kills all the dogs and all the experiments. You don't want me to show you those studies now because they're brutal. So typically they die, the animals all died of 3 tumors, the skeleton, the liver, and the lungs. Skeleton, lungs, and liver in that order. So 90 out of 144 dogs died of skeleton tumors, which means they're also producing radioactive stem cells, right? And liver was second, or lung was second, liver was third. Oh, hang on, I got to bring it up now. How can I not know that, anyway? Like, really, though, how can I not know this? Because I got a lot going on. I wasn't supposed to go down this road, and I didn't, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way it works. Here we go. Why is the dog study always so easy to find? I wonder. That one always shows up really. Boom, there it is. Thank you. Come again. 144 beagle dogs were allowed to live out their life. Death from radiation occurred 1.5 to 5.4 years after exposure. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning about 3 years. But bone tumors, 93 dogs, were the most common cause of death. Lung tumors, 46 dogs, were the second most common. Liver tumors were found 20 dogs, but the cause of death only 2 dogs. Occurred later than the tumors in the bones and lungs. But they would have got all the dogs would have had those 3 tumors, but they died, right, before the other tumors showed up. But they definitely would have showed up from the exposures. And tumors in these 3 organs often occurred in the same animal with competing causes of death. Right, different tumors in the same animal. But clearly skeleton tumors were the worst, which means radioactive stem cells for children and small animals and insects and everything, right? So it's insidious, right? It's a biological weapon, clearly. Now, there's 2 more facets to this story that you got to think about, because this applies to everything we already talked about tonight. It was discovered that human kidneys are at least 50 times less efficient than an animal's kidneys at removing plutonium. So it's 50 times less efficient than a human kidney. So you're 50 times more vulnerable than the dogs were, and the dogs all died. And you're 50 times more likely to die than the dog. But the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel rod is the curium isotopes. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And as we know, plutonium is not very friendly. It kills all the dogs in all the experiments, and it's a brutal way to die. There's no shots you can take for bone tumors to get rid of the misery. And so they lived in absolute misery. And the scientists, we know what the scientists are like, right? Ghouls. All right, let's keep going here. Go backwards. Let me start again. So you got Neptunium-239 plumes after 20 days covering the entire planet based on Tepco's numbers, which are incredibly not acknowledged in reactor 3 and 4 are gone. You got Plutonium-239 dispersals covering the whole planet in 20 months, and which kills all the dogs in all the studies. And curium isotopes were the biggest byproduct. Just don't think about the alpha. Think about the fact that they're the biggest byproduct of all different isotopes, of the 1,000 different isotopes we're worried about. And that the xenon-133, which burns a hole through your lungs and goes into your bones, apparently. You got rain, which you get 1 million. So think of a plume like that again, but of xenon-133. These are studies documenting it. This is a Canadian study of a notorious propaganda machine that he come out and spun it, claimed it was innocuous. Of course, it's simply not true, because science supersedes the lies. Rain with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131. There was cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms. This model based on 7 man-made, like plutons, right? Why is it dangerous so long, right? It's because it retains its energy. The same thing is true for iodine. You can't just have it true for one isotope, not true for the other ones. And anybody tells you different, that they're horrible, despicable people. They're actual trolls, right? And so the numbers we're talking about is enough to saturate the thyroid glands of all the species. Bummer, I know. Tell it to the whales, right? So you got Neptunium-239 dispersal covers the planet in 20 days. Plutonium-239 covering the planet in 21 days. And plutonium, of course, killed all the animals in all the experiments. And humans are 50 times less efficient at removing it than animals are. And the biggest byproduct was the curium. Curium, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. So curium is 20 times worse than plutonium. Plutonium killed all the species on the planet. Plutonium is the major byproduct, isotopes in the fuel rods. The scientists are cool, right? The journalists are cool. They can make a scientist look human. That's a pretty clever trick, you ask me. Let's keep rolling here. Now we're starting to get somewhere. We're still not to the show yet, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. You tell me. So 220 million atoms, nuclear radiation, but is recognized from the top cancer doctors as the most carcinogenic thing that exists because it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. The radiation doses in the Northeast and Great Lakes is equal to the West Coast, and the West Coast was clearly nuts. And so another thing to remember when you're looking at this stuff, this plume, by the way, is 19.5 days, 468 hours. So it's a plume of all these different isotopes, right? And when they hit each other, they don't mingle. So think of a snowstorm where if you could visually see what's going on, you would see all these ricochets going on. That's called an X-ray. And it's where the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons and betas, the uranium, plutonium, Americium, plutonium, the strontium, everything else, when they hit each other, these pulses of energy, they change direction. And I always butcher the name because I don't speak German very well. It's Bromson lung. It's known as an X-ray, and we call it. And it's just, you got two objects hitting each other at the speed of light and changing direction. And I'm just doing the best I can. I'm just a nobody. I'm just a one person. But I decided that I was going to make a difference, whether anybody accepted that or not. I was going to make a difference. So I run an educational program so that the world can come to a census. And the only people that can change it are the policymakers and the investors, so they don't invest in it and they don't promote it. If they find my stuff, they're going to be anti-nuclear, whether they admit it or not, because you can't unlearn what I teach if you're in the nuclear industry. And I don't really appeal to the majority of the population. I get that, but I'm not trying to. Right? I'm running an educational program, and those who find me understand. They know what's up, right? Not just cancer, but had low doses radiation. Low doses. The numbers I'm showing you are not low doses. Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer. And then they're putting 100 of them per kilogram. It used to be nuclear waste, now it's safe to eat. But see, suggesting that cesium is the only thing in the food is crimes against humanity in every sense of that word. It's completely genocide and omnicide. Well, there's a genocide to feed people this stuff and suggest there's only cesium and that is acceptable on top of that. Because pre-Fukushima, Japan, it was 0.1 atom per kilogram, 0.1 becquerel pulse per kilogram. That's only because they had all these nuclear reactors, you couldn't get away from it. But they're only looking for gamma, and they're only looking for one gamma, they're looking for cesium. 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. So the radioactive material from the reactor is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's like explosions going off in the cells, blowing a hole in the DNA, but it's much worse than that. Gamma will pulse energy 600 feet. It'll go through 2 houses down, it'll pulse through both houses and irradiate you and your loved ones and your kids and your pets and your bids at nighttime and all day, every day. UN committee chairman studying Fukushima impact wouldn't expect to see health effects. Of course, the next year there was 865,000 extra cancers. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. You know, they don't have enough doctors. They don't have enough this and that down there to cover the country's problems anyway. And it's not just heart problems, or cancer rather. It's heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. And in fact, the first studies they do after meltdowns, not the only ones, but one of the key focuses is going to be autism and Down syndrome. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates doubled to Japan's average. And excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. In my province, 90% of the people are obese because they've not only been fed GMO for the last 40 years, but a lot of the nasty food from Japan was shipped here. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days, right? When I came to the East Coast, I was 165, and I just never changed my diet or nothing, just which is typical of radiation brain damage. I just come off 6 years research expeditions in the plume, 4 to 5 months a year on the West Coast. Nothing left on the West Coast, everything gone. You still had to document it to quantify that this actually happened, so I had to suck it up and do it. And Fukushima is the serious most man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now nearly double Japan's average, 2015. Gunderson, good old Gunderson. He loves you so much he'd like to kill you. Move south of the equator if the Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry. Well, have a look at that. The fuel pool went dry. You see these people behind me? These monsters? They're pretending that they're in the fuel pool.
And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident,
All right, I think we should be back any second. Testing 10, 9, 8, 7. We just got kicked off here if you're joining us later. I just refreshed my page. If I come back, you guys should refresh your page. Oh, there we are, I think. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we were talking about Arnie Gunderson, and we were playing the video. I don't know if we should try that again. So last night I played that video. Wasn't that long ago. We can do without it. So let's do a recap. If you're watching this later, you probably never noticed anything. But we just got booted off. Got booted off my computer. And, so I'm gonna have to do a whole new session starting tomorrow. So that in case this one is infested with the parasite nuclear industry. Anyway, let's get back after it. There we go. All right. So nuclear scientists have showed us the plume, but of course they say it's like a banana. So we have a plume of Neptunium-239 not acknowledged. We know it's very dangerous. There's a plutonium-239 dispersal. We know that is lethal to everything with replicating cells, particularly puppies and dogs. We have 1 million atoms per square meter. Like the Becquerel has to come from somewhere. So hence the word atom, anthropogenic man-made atom. And man-made stuff, even if it's got a long half-life, it still has that energy every second. It never goes away. The natural, like natural uranium, is harmless anyway. It'll be harmless. It'll be the same energy, though, in 4 billion years, as it got today, before it goes through a chain reaction. The uranium-238, for instance, right? But once it goes into a chain reaction, it and plutonium, which is anthropogenic, man-made, that combination will keep this reaction going by producing 235, for instance, plutonium-239, 238, 240s, fission products that helps the chain reaction. So how many atoms do you got to produce to boil a glass of water? It takes a lot of energy, right? A lot of energy to boil a glass of water in atoms. Because you can put 200 million atoms on a hidden needle, but you can't see it. It's the perfect extinction machine because there's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. So let's start this. I've screwed that up, so let me start again. So we had plutonium-239 dispersal covering the entire planet in 20 days to your left. Neptunium-239 dispersal covering the entire planet. We have 20 million particles of iodine-131 covering the planet, particularly North America and Canada. You had 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 based on 7 days. And then based on a 31-day plume model, the whole planet. This is all these are government's institutional documentations. The 20 million was the Canadian, by the way. The plume is covering the planet. Cesium-137 was pulses energy 600 feet every second. That's acknowledged. At the lowest levels are very harmful to life. We've got to rethink the exposure levels from anthropogenic man-made nuclear. And we have sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs at 360 atoms. These are hot particles. Just let me go down a little bit of detail about that because we brought it up a lot tonight. And I don't think it's fair not to talk about that. Because maybe this is your first time here and this might be the only time. So if I don't give you this extra information, then I'll regret it. And you'll never know on top of that, right? So, okay. So, the dreaded sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. Fire legal limits, no radioactive rain. Problem is there's so much. I'll find it. It's right here somewhere. Must be back here. Oh my God. Sulfur. I got everything but that. Just bear with me. I'll get it. One of those nights. Eclipse, Cancer, Randall, the Pacific, talks about legal limits, leftover, fire. Buckyballs. I gotta put another name on that. Okay, here we go. This is important because these are hot particles. And that the claim is very little is known about it. They claim very little is known about it, right? Almost there. The problem with this story is it's complicated, but it's not. It's complicated if you're trying to figure it out on your own, I think is what I mean by that. All right, let's try this. Chain reaction may have lasted 7 months at Fukushima, and the radioactive 35 sulfur produced by spraying salt water, the sulfur is liberated through the temperatures and creates Gunderson again. He never needs to be in these stories. They injected them into the stories to try to give it credibility, right? Go read the abstracts, go read the stories. Uranol peroxide. So it's hydrogen peroxide, hydrogen sulfur peroxide buckyballs is what I call it. I think that's what they call it too. I don't know where I got that too. clearly I got it somewhere. So peroxide, unprecedented phenomenon from using salt water in Fukushima reactors, forming new unprecedented phenomenon from salt water on the 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature nuclear meltdowns, forming new uranium compounds able to travel long distances like carbon buckyballs. So they're able to ingest the uranium or plutonium, Americium, or the radioactive isotope inside the radioactive sulfur. A 2-for-1. Which this was the. That doesn't do it justice. I got my back picture screwed up, do I? Hang on, I'll get there. Nothing's easy. So I'm assuming they hacked me, to tell you the truth, just now. That's why the show went down. I had to reboot everything. Ain't my first rodeo, but I use the same equipment as they use at TV stations. I buy it from the same supplier. And then everything has to work together, which took many months to get them to cooperate. Okay, so let me start this again. Okay, why did I come over here? I wanted to show you the viewer how friggin' clumsy I am. Hang on. I got it here somewhere. Clearly that's no good. Fix that one. I was looking for a zoom shot of the screen, so let me do it the hard way. I can do things digitally, right? Let me assign that somewhere now so I can find it next time. Yeah, because that's one of the great things. What I'm doing is I can say be right here, and now when I say zoom in, do that again. Because that time I screwed up, so I can probably get it right this time if you're still here. If you didn't run away after that major klutz. So now I can just zoom in on that spot. And I got no excuses for not having that set up. Okay, I don't. I really don't. So when I do it this, it doesn't work right. Okay, let's keep going anyway, because you're going to get confused now. Alright, I got to go backwards. So you had cesium-137 at 1,010 million atoms, covering the entire planet. You had sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. So you got sulfur right there, radioactive sulfur. I got buckyballs. Arnie Gunnison the lawyer. The reason they wanted the Hulk cooling was because of the seawater could cause a chain reaction or recriticality through neutrons. Unprecedented phenomenon using salt water in Fukushima. You knew about it in the Marshall Islands, you knew about it in Christmas Island, you knew about it in Maralinga, Montebello, they knew about it in the French Polynesian Islands. This particular effect, right, from the ocean detonations. And they knew that it was friggin', they being the creatures, they knew that this stuff, these carbon, sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs, would be catastrophic. And let me see what else. One more, just bear with me. Seems to kick me off the internet. I gotta make them pay. You gotta freaking pay for that nuke, scumbags. So I'm gonna pay for it. Fucking hurt. That actually hurt, that time. Dana the Wimp. What did I do wrong? Don't. My God, it's frightening how much stuff I have on my computer. Alright, there we go. I'm back in business, baby. Buckyballs, here we go. Let's do this one. Spears of radioactive material from Fukushima reported for the first time. Ball-like particles composed of cesium, iron, zinc. Impact on human health needs to be examined. Emissions of spherical cesium-bearing particles from an early stage of the Fukushima nuclear accident. First couple of months. Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about the hydrogen sulfur peroxide buckyballs. Is that where I got it to? I wonder. It must be there. Because he left out peroxide, like radioactive peroxide. Peroxide is formed by seawater and melted fuel, even more likely to react with the elements. So I think that was, I just put that in there to help articulate it for a certain thing, and it's stuck. This is stuck in my head. It was stuck in my head, and there's nothing I can do about it. Like a song with a bad one. It kills everything with replicating cells. Unprecedented phenomenon from using saltwater and Fukushima reactors. Yeah, you liberated the sulfur. They knew this during the nuclear testing, right? We got those studies. We've covered this. This is all news to us. That means we've been suffering the longest, that the world is dying, and we're aware of it. And forming new uranium compounds able to travel long distances like carbon buckyballs. You don't need the jet stream to traverse the entire planet, right? And the plumes from these are the only man-made element that we know about that create a plume that covers the entire planet. Because nuclear scientists says it's like a banana and a potato chip when walking sunshine. Don't believe them, right? They don't call them monsters for nothing. So 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organ. I'm still in that a lot. I'm going to make a change. So we've created over 7,000 pictures now. And they're not all crazy. Okay, actually the majority of them are, aren't they? And this is the newer software that I'm using. That's not what I want to do. Bear with me. That actually looks more appropriate. That's not what I'm looking for at all. Okay, let me do it this way. I'm right there. Am I actually streaming? Yeah. Just open up the comments to see. I got 14 people on my show. We're killing it, eh? Big time. We got big time. I got 14 people on my show. Should it be a crime for nuclear scientists to have kids considering they have destroyed all life? And so I'm kind of quantifying that tonight instead of doing my regular show. I apologize for picking on the nuclear scumbags. They love you so much, they love you to death. And there's must be a million ways to kill you with radiation. So they picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation. They're growing radioactive pollen plants too, right? Here's my depictions of the future. The robots were the last to go. We created robots to clean up the planet for 1 million years after we were gone, so that maybe there can be a future generation of something. And it's not climate change, as far as we can tell, if you're honest, is nuclear. Remember, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags? Let me get to this section. Tell you what, let's get this. Let's just cover what I've done the weekend. Some of those pictures for the rest of it. Because we're probably... Anyway, let's keep going. I'll catch up. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, so 220 million atoms of iodine-129. It covered the North Atlantic. That's I'm not sure if that's the Krypton 85 model. All right, let's get down here and we'll keep going. Gunnison says move it. We'd already covered that one. That's where the computer went down. The whole. It's not like it's an operating system. It's not like a normal computer. This is just strictly an operation system. Japan Times column is the public, possibly worldwide, gets sick. The truth will come out. No pun intended. The leak. That was a pun to the word leak because I hate the word leak. I have a meltdown every time I hear the word. Cataclysmic die-off of birds in the entire west coast of North America, the entire continent, the west coast continent, from New Mexico all the way to Alaska, is well documented. And this happens to be where we're finding all the dead species, which is massive die-off of sea creatures from California to Alaska. They forgot New Mexico. Animals are starving as the food chain continues to collapse. January 12, 2017. I was up by Alaska on the ocean in 2017 for almost 5 months, doing species counts by myself and being demonized for taking pictures of the coastline. The worst human ever. Everybody attacks me. And I provide the documentation for every one of my assertions, but because I'm censored so heavily. What we got here tonight? 14 concurrent viewers. Bless your hearts. There's more than that there, probably 15. YouTube is throttling my views. Tepco managers bow during a press conference in Tokyo March the 12th, the day after the tsunami. Then this was them after. The tsunami and the resulting explosion caused serious damage to the Fukushima plant in a satellite image taken March the 17th. Well, on March the 17th, the reactors had already blown up. All of them that were going to blow up, right? The number 3 unit of Fukushima. This is number 3's explosion. When I show you that picture, they did originally, right? But in the Raiders, they're quite the creatures, aren't they? Thick white smoke from the number 3 unit of Fukushima nuclear plant. Thick white smoke. He said thick white smoke. Look in the background. See the white smoke? Thick white smoke. Do you get what they're up to? So thick white smoke in the background of nuclear reactors. Or this picture, it's thick white smoke. It looks like smoke, right? No. Say you're on a swing, right? And you swing through that smoke. You'll have a fatal dose. Your organs will be melted in a few minutes. And you'll die. The March the 16th photo of the Fukushima Daiichi number 4 unit shows damage caused by the explosion. Much of the plant's complex is now in ruins. And they show you these zoomed in shots. And then these top shots, they don't give you any context whatsoever, right? That's why we call them affectionately around here the little sadistic demons. They really are like ghouls, aren't they? An aerial photo from March 16 shows the devastation at the Fukushima. So see that shot right there? That's devastation. But then they call this shot, which is, you can see a partial top of reactor 1. It's hard to say with these shots, right? To show you the crane. That's a transfer crane, though. I'll show you the crane. There's the crane right there, right? It doesn't belong there. Same as this one. It doesn't belong where it's to. It's not in the right spot. They couldn't go in the control room of Fukushima for 7 years. They didn't look like that when they went in there, and they didn't stay there. They got the frig out of there. And they were just popular bloggers who got permission to be there with the help of Tepco, because the propaganda is great, right? Police talked to an evacuated shelter in the city of Fukushima. Total of 300,000 people thought to be evacuation shelters or temporary accommodations. It's actually close to 500,000. Workers in radiation protection suits. Stupidest thing imaginable. With Geiger counters in their hand, they're going to check everybody. These are not radiation protection suits, because gamma shines, X-rays, neutron bombardment, beta rays, alpha shine will blast through those suits. The Tokyo Fire Department elite hyper rescue teams dispatched 240 kilometers to help in the fight against the meltdown Fukushima plant. Ha ha! Why would you send them in? Why wouldn't you send in nuclear engineers? Why would you send in people who know nothing about radiation into a nuclear meltdown? It's disgusting. So they were sacrificed, right? A family eats a meager meal at a makeshift evacuation center, and the nuclear industry wasn't eating no makeshift meager meals during this point. They were eating steaks and caviar, man. They were making a fortune telling you it was like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine. The death toll from the earthquakes tsunami is currently at 9,400 at this point, with almost 15,000 people reported missing. Rescuers such as this man in the city are looking for survivors and burying the dead in the aftermath. One of the few positive stories from the disaster: 2 survivors, 80-year-old woman rescued from under rubble 9 days after the tsunami. That's incredible, eh? Rescue workers carry a body from the rubble in the city of... I don't know if I heard of that city before. Should I butcher their name just for fun? Maninichi / nuclear meltdown, nuclear waste zone now, thanks to the nuclear industry. Like Nato Khan, right, the former prime minister, said half the countries could have been evacuated from the radioactive fallout if reactor 4 had went. And of course, reactor 4 went, right? So why would you want one of those things on your planet, let alone your country or your community or city? Why would you allow that? Use your head. Self-defense forces prepare to spray water in the direction of Unit 3 of the Fukushima Daiichi plant on March the 18th. The facility was sprayed with tons of water in a bid to stop the fuel. Well, they need 4,500 tons each reactor each minute. That's a million gallons. That's 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks with a ton of water in the back of it, because that's all it can carry, right? 2,200 pounds, which is Japanese is metric, right? So imagine trying to dump 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks into anything at the one time, right? Per minute. You got 1 minute to dump them. Nuclear scientists says it's easy. We just tell you. We don't do stuff. The fleet of fire trucks was used to attempt to cool down the fuel rods at the Fukushima reactor. Yeah, but originally there was 3 fire trucks for the site. And 2 of them were lost in the tsunami. Those buildings were washed away. And then the one that was left had no way of making it to the reactors. Once the reactor detonated, well, there ain't nobody going into that territory. And so by the time they got there, it would have been long after all the reactors had already detonated, because there was no way Let me explain that to you. Might as well. I'm a sucker for punishment. I might get lucky, don't find a picture right away that works. The only problem is I'm going to find other pictures that I got to utilize. Yeah, hot cases, the nuclear industry is. I'm digress now. My apologies. So, fuel pool. Fukushima plant ready for delicate fuel removal. So that picture over there is 2013, November the 7th. And this is a few months before that, 2013. So this is what the building looked like, all four sides of the building. And then the media pretended they were in the building at the fuel pool, which is at the very top of those two red depictions up there. That's the two fuel pools. And the reason there's so much in these fuel pools, there's decades of reactor cores, is because they don't have a repository in Japan, let alone anywhere else on the planet. And so suggesting that they're at the fuel pool of a building that clearly was completely destroyed, right? And then when you look at the original picture of it, okay, now what's important about this, the reason I've shown you this, all right, okay, is because I'll show you where the fuel pool is on this map. Ooh, you dirty wabbit. Oh yeah, common spin fuel pool. Let's follow that one. It's right there. So there's one here, then the second one is right there on the bottom. Okay. He's right there. All right, okay. So what's this building right across from it? They're on the same road, so it's the same height, and that's the road, and then you make a right turn. So this is the radiation waste. I don't like the sound of that. That's actually the incinerator where they burn radiation waste because no one's paying attention, right? So the common spin fuel pool is right here. So this building here is the big question. Let's trace that one all the way back. Oh, wait, what's this? Reactor number 4. Oh, well, that's kind of weird because right across the street from that puppy is reactor 4. On the same street right behind it is this doozy right here. Okay. And these people are pretending that they're above the fuel pool and the reactor core. Reactor 4, which is this building, which you can't be in because it doesn't exist, right? Now the common spin fuel pool, they said was being sprayed with water, but we know it had a criticality event, which meant it melted down. Contains 6,375 spent fuel assemblies, which is over 12 million pounds. And that's the only common spent fuel pool they have on the site. And it ain't this one right here, like they're pretending it is. Right, and reactor 3 right alongside of it detonated. Reactor 4 is to your left. It is completely gone. I want to play this video again. If I disappear this time, I'll come back tomorrow night, but I'm not going to be impressed, nuclear.
And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern.
Yeah.
If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire,
wow, like that?
you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Like that? Uh-oh, I'm not liking that. Oh, we made it through that. All right, let me get back down here. Alrighty, let me delete all of this. So we don't end up back here. That's not it. Right there? Is that it? No. Oh, right here. Okay, so let me just recap. Hang on, let me recap. I'll deal with this tomorrow when I got to put a new session in now because we had these problems at night. Okay. Then we'll call it a good night. So reactors blew up, and I mean blew up. Reactor 4 and reactor 3. And so they put covers over them and then pretend that they were in them. 2013. And a lot of media done that. The plumes, I'm hearing an echo because I had the headphones on. Neptune 230, not an echo, but Neptunium 239 dispersion covering the planet 20 days. And we know it's not very friendly stuff. Plutonium 239 dispersal. These are huge numbers we're talking about, by the way. Because it can't be just... it was covered that human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than animal kidneys that remove from plutonium, which killed all the animals in all the studies. And the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes. You need lead shielding 20 times thicker. Great. The plume model showed a million. So the biggest number we're going to see here is dwarfed by curium isotopes, by the way. That we're going to, when you see all these numbers, the bigger number will be the curium, though. You got 1 million atoms of xenon-133 covering the planet, and it would look like that, right? You got 20 million particles from the fuel melting down and coming in contact with cement and steel and everything else. And so it atomizes in aerosol and ionized and radiated those particulates, and that's what you're seeing there. And that application, they're saying it was emitting iodine-131. Radiation levels on the U.S. West Coast spiked to 1 million to 10 million times, this is according to the French government. And that model was based on 8 days or 7 days. And this model right here is based on 30 days. Right, so it's a snowstorm of radiation. It comes out, it never melts, it never goes away. It contaminates and assimilates itself in every facet of everything. And everything on the planet, there's not a species or biota, flora, fauna on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against this stuff. So everything has incredible issues coming in proximity. 600 feet for cesium-137 happens to be proximity, right? And then you have the Bromson-Long effect, but you also have a worldwide Wigner effect going on. And you also have, throughout the ecosystem, the forests, grasslands and everything else, the whole biota is getting full-body X-rays, and humans, of course. But all 8 million species, or all the species on the land, are dealing with full-body X-rays, so they're going to, over a few generations, they're going to stop reproducing. And they have more generations quicker than we do, right, obviously? Insects, birds, mammals, and animals. And so when they disappear, then you know the atomic plague is real. And the very lowest levels of radiation are harmful to life. We have to rethink the exposures. Wait for it. So you have 360 atoms of sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. And there was another study of 1,500 sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyball atoms per cubic meter of air in California, for instance. But that would have been symmetrical with all the isotopes would have traveled together. You don't get a plume of this and a plume of that, okay? It doesn't work that way. It's like a snowstorm of radioactive disaster. So the scientists knew this stuff. They know all this stuff. They knew everything I'm telling you. And they knew the reactor fuel pools, reactor cores were gone. So all academics and all journalists had to participate for that law to work. That law couldn't work on its own merits. Right? You needed the full and complete acquiescing of all the academic community. And that was apparently pretty simple to accomplished, right? It's very dangerous for very long periods of time. In this case, 150 million years. When you see a half-life, there's 10 of them, right? So they very rarely acknowledge they'll just say half-life. So if it's iodine-131, they'll say it's got an 8-day half-life. You're like, that was gone in a couple of weeks. It's about 80 days, say, right? But, there's debate on that too. Because the radioactive lead that's left over, by the way, is still radioactive anthropogenic man-made lead. And you know how poisoning in increments work? Well, so it's extremely applicable to anthropogenic man-made radiation. West Coast hit with 220 million atoms. Okay. We're just trying. And this is nasty for extended periods of time. The Northern Hemisphere was buried. And it's not just... Children are at least 1,000 times more issues than an adult because they're still developing. So their stem cells and their hormones are now radioactive. Their thyroids and adrenaline glands and everything else. The pituitary gland, which is dependent upon the thyroid gland, which is... And it's very specialized. Well, certainly all hormones are. But that's going to be saturated. Your brain becomes saturated with radioactive hormones. And the proper radio frequency can keep those in an excited state even more, producing more damage than the brutal damage it was already producing. This is a sadistic industry. So it's not just cancers, heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid. And it can cause a cancer by one hot particle. It's in your body attacks with white blood cells for the rest of your life till it builds a tumor around it. So imagine getting millions in your body. Now your immune system is compromised. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. So 100 atoms per kilogram, because you can't have a Becquerel without an atom, of cesium is safe to eat, whereas before it was nuclear waste. But it's not safe to eat just because you had a nuclear accident. You should have abandoned the country. So rather than abandon the country, they said, oh, it'll be okay. Yeah, you're going to get sick and die, but the nuclear industry still comes out smelling like a pie. Radioactive material from the reactor is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And it never goes away, right? UN says don't expect any health effects, but that's all they've seen. There's absurd amount of, 865,000 cancers. Again, not everybody got health care. Not everybody's diagnosed, right? Obesity almost doubled in the first year, which is a sign of radioactive brain damage. So there has to be a catalyst for all of this stuff, see? What was the catalyst for the cancers? What was the catalyst for half the country becoming obese in 1 year? Why did they pretend they were in a building that doesn't exist? Why is Arnie pretending he's almost human? People have warned us, though, right? The first couple of... and die after we've done the research expeditions. This is not a game. The radioactive fallout really did happen. It actually happened. I'm just a little pissed off because they kicked me offline earlier, so I gotta make them pay now. They gotta pay. Fair is only fair. Alrighty. Oh, it's 20 after 12. So if you watch this video later, there was a little interference. They actually kicked me offline. It took me 7 or 8 minutes to get back online. But I'm able to keep the stream, see? Yeah. Alright. What do we got going on here? Let's bring up the poll. Should it be a crime for nuclear scientists to have kids considering they have destroyed all life? It's pretty hard to argue with what I'm saying. Because if they have kids, what are they going to do? They're going to destroy whatever's left. And that's what we've seen. That's the legacy. That's what they've done. And so all of them should have to carry a fuel rod for 30 feet. As soon as they become a nuclear scientist, it's called running of the fuel rod. And then you pass it on when when the first nuclear scientist drops dead 15 feet down the road, the next nuclear scientist picks up the nuclear fuel rod and he runs with it, right? And your job is to make it right around the whole planet. Then we don't have to worry about nuclear scientists no more. But right now we got to. And they got the upper hand because, see, the advantage is they don't look like us. Right? They don't look like, nuclear scientists, they don't look like us. The journalist's job is to make them look like us, but they don't look like us. I'm not trying to be mean, okay? I'm not. I like the little fuckers. They're charmers is what these pieces of shit are. Right? Look at him. You tell me that's not a charmer? There's a nuclear scientist all day. Now, when you see him, they might have disappearance, right? They may look almost human. Some of them looks almost human, don't they? Look at that. See, you swear that fella was a good guy, but you'd be wrong. You'd be real wrong. The only good nuclear scientist is the nuclear scientist who sacrificed his life for the planet at Fukushima. That's the only good nuclear scientist in Dana's books. And you can't get a nuclear scientist to go to Fukushima. He'll claw your friggin' eyes out. No! I can't go. I gotta have babies to carry on my legacy of being a monster. Mom, Dana's cracking up. Hang on. I'm still a little irked that they kicked me offline. It's a neat trick what they done too. I don't like to say it because then they'll know the other side of the story. On my side, I don't want them. I want to deny them that. Dana won't get offline. Make him get offline. Nuclear scientists are upset that we're still going because right now it's after 12 midnight, right? They turn back into pumpkins. Why do most parents name their son, their pro-nuclear scientists' parents? Why did they name their son like Igor? What's up with that? There's an awful lot of Igors. I'm just an Igor, nuclear scientist, rock and roll scientist every day. See, I could have been a songwriter. Like this guy, he could be a songwriter, can't he? I think this is, Mom, Dana won't leave us alone. Go back. Give up the show. We're going to close the poll down. Thank you, everybody. Got 34 votes. Should it be a crime for nuclear scientists to have kids? Clearly. And I didn't need to twist anybody's arm tonight, that's for sure. Alrighty. We'll see everybody on Monday's show tomorrow night. Now, tomorrow night we're going to start the show. We're just going to do the show we're supposed to do tonight. I'm not going to ramble on for 2 hours and 10 minutes or something, okay? I swear. Have a great night. See everybody next time. And this should hopefully be a deterrent for the nuclear industry to knock me off the line because I'll do a longer show next time, even longer than the night. If you do it again, you bastards. We're going to play a closing song known as Calm Down Charlie, a troll that stalked us for now over 10 years.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams.
This was created by James Lucid.
Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild. but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.